Thank you, Chairman. That's now started.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for attending this virtual meeting of the Audit Committee. The meeting is being webcast on YouTube via the County Council website. All decisions today will be reached through a vote, and at the appropriate time, we will call for a vote under each item, and the outcome will be read by Carolyn in terms of the result. Can we start first if I read the names of the members of the committee, and if you could confirm that you are present and you can hear. Myself, I'm Chairman Keith Evans, and I can see and hear. Councillor McAvoy.
Yes, Chairman, I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Hiscock.
Yes, Chairman, I'm here and I can hear you as well.
Thank you. Councillor Tennant, deputising for Councillor Keith House.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Kempgee.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Yes, I'm here, sorry.
Councillor Thacker. No, I don't think he signed in this morning. And Councillor Brooks.
Yes, here present, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we have received apologies of absence from Councillors Makata and House. And members, if I can remind you, if you've got any items of declarations you need to make in terms of personal interest, you can make them now or at the time when the item comes up in the agenda. Are there any to be made at this point?
Yes, please, Chair. It's Councillor Hiscock.
Yes,
I'd like to declare an interest that my wife is an employee at Southampton General Hospital for Southampton University Hospital Trust.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. No others? Okay, let's go on to the minutes of the previous meeting held on 23rd of July. Are members happy with those as a correct record? If you put your hands up in the air, that will do. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Let's go through them in terms of correctness on page 5, matters arising, page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. And page 12. Thank you, members. Thank you. No matters arising, so I'm free to sign those minutes off. And we move to item 6, which is from Peter Andrews in terms of the use of regulated investigatory powers. Peter, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As you can see, this is a very short briefing paper that just presents the data regarding the County Council's use of regulatory investigatory powers. And to be honest, there's no surprises given the overall situation that we find ourselves in, that the County Council has not used its surveillance powers in the first quarter of this financial year. I'm happy to take any questions though.
Peter, is that because it's been difficult with the coronavirus issues, or because there haven't been any issues?
I think that it's a combination. Certainly the activities, surveillance activities, are only used where it's really useful to use those, so we use those powers very sparingly. And my understanding from our trading standards colleagues is that there hasn't been any cases that have warranted the use of those powers in that first quarter.
Okay, all right, thank you, Peter. Members, any comments or questions? No? Okay, with that, are you happy to take the recommendation that we receive and note the report from in terms of these activities? Agreed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Move to item 7, which is the report from Ernst and Young on the accounts. Who do we have here, Carolyn? Carolyn?
Hello, sorry, Chairman. For the next item, it'd be Sarah Croft, and Kevin is also on the call.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start with a few introductory messages over the report, if that's okay. Sarah will run through the detailed aspects of the risks we identified in our findings, and then I'll summarise the final aspects.
Okay.
So, as we set out in the executive summary of the report, we are substantially complete with the audit. We aren't quite done, but given the challenges of a very unusual context this year that we are working in and evaluating the consequences of, I do feel we're in a reasonable position and definitely on the home straight. We set out on page 5 of our report, or page 27 of the reporting pack, some of those aspects that COVID-19 has had on the audit. The key outstanding item that we're still working on regards the second point on going concern disclosures. So when we pick up a set of accounts at the moment, one of the key things we or the reader wants to know is how has COVID-19 affected things and what the future impact might it have. We've been working with the officers to obtain that information, and as of early this week, we now have all the information that we think we require. So we're just working through that now to go through the final processes, including a mandatory consultation which Ernst & Young require to make sure we're being consistent and have undertaken sufficient work in this area. We are still considering the final form of the audit report, which we note on page 7 or page 29 in the report pack. We're considering whether we need an emphasis of matter paragraph regarding the impact of going concern and also potentially the valuation uncertainties regarding property, plant and equipment valuations. Again, this has been impacted by the COVID-19 and uncertainties in valuing assets around the year end. Our final judgment will be made when we've completed the audit work, but what I wanted to emphasise today is these are not qualifications to our opinion. An emphasis of matter can only refer to a disclosure that is properly made and included in the accounts, if in our judgment it is important to the reader to be aware of that information. I think at the present time I'm probably less likely to do that for property valuations, but for going concern I'm still making that judgment. I also need to draw attention to our ability to sign the accounts at the moment, which remains uncertain. Putting aside the outstanding issues which I've just covered, there have been national discussions regarding the accounting treatment for the dedicated schools grant, and especially where this results in deficit positions on school reserves. MHCLG are looking at a statutory instrument which may potentially amend the accounting required, so therefore we need to see what that might entail. We are working with the National Audit Office, other audit providers and CITFA, liaising with the Ministry to make sure that that is laid well in advance of the 30th of November timetable for you to publish your accounts, and on the basis of current information we do expect that timetable still to be achieved.
So, Kevin, even though you say you're not yet certain as to whether you can sign off the accounts, you are fairly certain they will be.
Oh, they will be signed off. It's just a question of when. So we're just waiting for the Ministry to actually lay that statutory instrument down.
Okay.
Then we can consider exactly what it says, whether a change might be needed, and then we should be,
Okay. Right.
have full information we require.
Thank you.
So I think that's my headline summary of highlights for the start. So if I could then hand over to Sarah just to take you through the key risks in section 2 of the report, starting on page 12.
Thanks, Kevin. Apologies, I can't get my camera working this morning, so you can't see me, but I'll just talk you through the key areas of our audit that we previously identified in our audit plan 2, what work we've done and the conclusions. So if we start on page 34 of the audit pack, this is our mandatory audit risk. So we have this on every engagement, and it is to look at any misstatements that would be due to fraud or error. So we focus our attention here on any journals that are posted that don't have a valid business purpose. We look at any inappropriate judgments that have been applied, and we look at estimates that have been included in the financial statements to look to see whether evidence of management bias in those estimates and the assumptions that are used to populate. We've not identified any transactions outside the normal business or any weaknesses in controls or evidence of management override in our testing. If I move to the next page, we've got our next significant, which is inappropriate capitalisation of revenue expenditure. And again, is an audit risk that is required on every engagement. And this risk, we really look at expenditure that has been capitalised inappropriately, so instead of through the comprehensive income and expenditure statement. I've not identified any misstatements or any property, plant and equipment have been inappropriately capitalised that should have been charged to revenue, and we've not noted issues on transactions that we wish to bring to your attention. Page 36, we have got the risk in relation to investment properties. So this one was noted to you in the audit update where we noted the impact of COVID-19. COVID-19 has had an impact on the investment property market. There's been an impact on the occupation of buildings due to forced closures, and rental income expected to fall as tenants have defaulted on their rents. We engaged valuations experts to assist us with this testing, and at the time that we prepared the audit report, we noted that the report from our experts was still outstanding. So this work has now concluded. We have noted a small misstatement which is above our nominal amount of 2.1 million, and that is based on we have calculated a range as to which the valuations could fall, and the valuation of one item fell just outside that range. As it is just above our nominal amount, it is ultimately not material, so we've agreed with management that that would remain unadjusted, and that will just be reported in the letter of recommendation from management. As Kevin mentioned, there may also be an emphasis of matter paragraph that we include in our audit report, but we've not yet concluded on whether or not we will be including that paragraph. On page 37, we move on, so still on valuations, but this is now looking at the valuation of land and buildings, which is one of the most significant balances on the County Council's balance sheet. So in doing this testing, again, we utilised EY valuation experts in assisting with some of the testing on this. We did note a difference in testing, and this was on assets that are not subject to the formal revaluation in the year. So management perform an exercise of looking to see if there's been a material movement year on year. Now the difference we've noted, the net difference is 4.3 million, and that difference came around due to a difference in indices used and the timing of the indices. So management had used indices as at the 1st of April 2019, whereas when we've reperformed, we thought it more appropriate to use them as at the balance sheet date, the 31st of March 2020. Again, that the 4.3 million is above our reporting threshold, but it is not one that we require to be adjusted, and management have not adjusted that on the grounds of materiality. And then on page 38, we note other risks and areas of audit focus. So we have the pension liability valuation. So again, we have reviewed the disclosures in the accounts and the accounting entries made in relation to I-19. We've reviewed the adjustments in respect to the late McLeod ruling to have been included, and also the latest rulings in relation to Goodwin to confirm that the impact wasn't material to the County Council. We are still finalising our work because we do S19 work for the pension fund, so we are still finalising that work, but we expect to be able to release those letters this week to the County Council, which will conclude our work for the County Council and the pension fund. The last point on this page is private finance initiatives. So the Council has PFI contracts in place. This year we engaged our PFI to review the street lighting model. As at today's date, that report is still out. However, from initial discussions, we don't anticipate there to be any changes to the accounts. But when we have got that report finalised, we will conclude that with management. On page 39, we highlight going concern. There wasn't too much I wanted to touch on this because Kevin's quite helpfully gone through the points on that already. We have received, we think, everything we need now, so we're just working through our internal processes in order to conclude on that. And then the last point that I wanted to draw out before I pass back to Kevin, just on page 47 in your reporting packs, and that's value for money. And just to conclude that there's been no changes to the risks, so we've not identified any significant risks in this area, and there's nothing to report to you in terms of value for money.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Kevin?
So just a very brief concluding remark from me. Skipping all the way through to page 58, so section 9 of our report, I do feel it is important that we do reconfirm our independence to you. So we are independent from the council and its officers. So as members, you can be assured that we have no interest in providing anything other than an independent report to you, which you can then take into account in your decision whether to approve the statement of accounts of the authority or not. And as a very final comment, I'd like to place on record my thanks to the officers of the council with their assistance in completing our audit this year. As I mentioned previously, it's been very unusual circumstances, but I do feel that we have worked together well as a wider team to be able to get to this point, and no doubt that we will continue to do so for those remaining procedures which will conclude our work. So I have no other aspects which I want to highlight to you from this report. I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Kevin. Members, any comments or questions? If you raise your hand, I should be able to see it. Councillor Hiscock.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question, it's more a comment. I'd just like to thank the auditors and the staff that have helped them to produce these accounts. It must have been very difficult, especially during the worst times in lockdown. They've come through it very well, and it is appreciated by members, I'm sure. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's a reflection of the good, excellent procedures that we have in place at the county that enables this to take place. Thank you, members. Any other comments or questions? No, with that, can I put the recommendation to you that the Audit Committee receives and notes the Hampshire County Council and Hampshire Pension Fund audit reports for the year ending 31st March 2020. Caroline, do you want to go through this in a formal manner, or are you happy just to have hands raised?
Thank you, Chairman. I think for this and any other business matters that aren't requiring a poll, I know item 8 will. If members could just give a verbal agreement, that would be perfectly suitable. So our members agreed to the recommendation.
Agreed. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, members. Okay, and thank you. Thank you, Sarah and Kevin, for your presentation. Thank you very much indeed. Members, with that, go to item 8, which is the statement of accounts. Let me pass over to Anne.
Thank you, Chairman. So this covering report is a covering report to the draft statement of accounts for the financial year 1920. These have been published on the Hampshire County Council website since early June this year, and it's these accounts that have been subject to the audit work that we've just heard about. We've also heard that there's just a few areas in order to conclude the audit, and as such the accounts aren't final until that work is concluded. But as we've just heard, the changes to the draft accounts will be very minor. They will principally be wording adjustments regarding the areas that Kevin and Sarah just highlighted, particularly around the concept of going concern and the valuation of assets. So what this report asks the committee to do is to approve the statement of accounts, and in doing so delegates responsibility to the Chief Financial Officer, Carolyn Williamson, to make any of those final minor amendments to the accounts in order to complete the audit work and publish the final statement of accounts before the statutory deadline of the 30th of November. The other aspect that this report draws to the attention of the Audit Committee is that in order to complete the audit opinion, the letters of representation for both the County Council and the Hampshire Pension Fund will need to be signed both by management and also on behalf of the committee. So examples of those reports are attached to this agenda item and are also included in the audit results reports from the previous agenda item. They will just need to be absolutely sort of finalised with the auditors, as we've heard, in order to cover off those going concern considerations. But this report therefore recommends that the committee approve the statement of accounts on that basis and confirms that those letters of representation can be signed. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Members, with that and with the earlier presentation we have, are there any comments or questions with regard to the statement of accounts for 2019 to 2020? No? Okay. Can I therefore put the recommendations to you that are on page 79? First of all, that the statement of accounts be approved.
Agreed.
Secondly, the letters of representation in terms of the County Council and the Hampshire Pension Fund be signed, and that delegated authority be given to the Deputy Chief Executive and Director of Corporate Research to approve any minor amendments to those statements of accounts.
Agreed.
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 You agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you, members. And item 9, which is also Anne, was an independent review into the oversight of local audit and the transparency of local authority financial reporting. An exciting title.
Thank you, Chairman. So at this stage, this report is just to bring to the attention of members of the Audit Committee the conclusion of the independent review that was carried out by Sir Tony Redmond into the effectiveness of external audit and transparency of financial reporting. Now that review was published just 2 or 3 weeks ago in early September. It's a fairly lengthy document. It makes 23 recommendations, and I'm sure you will want to look at the report in detail, and indeed officers will be looking at the report in detail in order to bring back any recommendations for consideration by this committee at a subsequent meeting. But for now, we wanted to bring this to your attention and just to highlight the 3 main topics that are covered in the report, which looks at the arrangements for local audit of all local authorities, including police and fire, and the governance arrangements, which also looks at the way audit committees operate, and it also looks at and makes recommendations around the financial reporting and comments that the very long document that you are asked to approve every year is perhaps not that useful to members of the public in terms of understanding the financial performance of a local authority, and it makes recommendations. I'm hoping that we'll streamline that document, but in particular recommends an additional statement to highlight the actual performance more clearly against the budget and therefore the council tax that residents have paid. So I'm happy to take any comments or observations at this point, but the report is just to note this government publication.
If they can achieve that last objective, they'll be doing wonders. Okay, members, any comments or questions? So you're happy to receive this? Can't see any hand up. Has someone got a question?
Yeah.
I don't know who's oh, Mark. Sorry, Mark. Yes.
Can you see my hand, Chairman?
No, I can't.
Ah.
I can see your picture and a little blue circle around it that's flashing. But no, you're not up on the main billboard yet, Mark.
I'm sorry, Chairman. Might have a broadband width problem.
There we go.
Thank you for the report. Well, rather like you, Chairman, when I saw the title, my eyes glazed over somewhat. And then to see that list of quangos that were going to be replaced, my heart gave a slight flip of pleasure. However, actually, I then did read the report and I found it absolutely fascinating and also quite witty. In terms of humour, as Anne has touched on, when he opines, this famous chap, Sir Tony Redmond, when he opines that the public have problems understanding local authority report, he didn't even mention that councillors have problems understanding.
We're meant to be all knowing, Mark.
Yeah, we know what we know. The other thing that amused me is, surprise, surprise, that the auditors don't think they're paid well enough for the work, and this is why there are problems in delays, apparently, in the production of the accounts. But I personally don't know whose idea it was to move the finalisation up of the accounts from September to July anyway, ab initio. I always thought, and I think the Deputy Chief Executive would join with me in agreeing that that was always an almost impossible task, especially for very substantial local authorities such as Hampshire. One thing I would also make a point on, and then I'm going to ask Anne a question, and that is that I had an anecdotal point. I had the good fortune to be a founder member of the South Downs National Park Authority and sat on its very first audit committee. And right from the start, we had 2 independent members on that audit committee, and it was incredibly helpful. Clearly, it's important to be fortunate enough to get the quality of person that is required to be an independent person on an audit committee. But it was a really, really useful thing to have, and I thoroughly endorse that recommendation. And my question is, how are we getting on? What is the timing of implementing these recommendations?
So I think the review itself, Sir Tony Redmond obviously encouraged sort of early consideration of these recommendations, but I have to admit that I don't have knowledge of the exact timescale for each of them. In terms of I think in terms of membership of audit committees, and whether my colleagues from legal services might be able to help me on this. That might be something that the county council could consider independently of this review in terms of membership of the audit committee. In terms of some of the other recommendations of the Redmond review overall, some will require legislative change. So indeed, as we heard earlier on in our private briefing session, that it's the accounts and audit regulations that sets the deadlines for the production of draft accounts and audited accounts. Now they were changed very, very swiftly in April as a result of COVID-19. So they could be changed quite swiftly again if we were to make the new deadline for audited accounts the 30th of September going forwards. And then in other areas, I think certainly in terms of the and as you can tell, the one I'm most interested in is about streamlining the statement of accounts. But to be honest, that's been a subject of quite a few other reviews in the sector, and quite how quickly, if ever, we will have a streamlined set of accounts. I'm not so sure, but there is talk that the additional summary statement, which will be much shorter and easier to understand by members of the public, and of course members of the committee, but I know that you understand it all anyway. That statement could well be come in sooner, possibly for the 2021 or even the 21-22 statement of accounts. That would be a good thing. And in terms of our existing narrative report that accompanies our formal statement of accounts, I think in the Hampshire County Council we go a long way to explaining that position anyway, in terms of showing the outturn position for each service of the County Council against their budget. So that's a statement I think we could fairly easily implement. One of the differences in the recommendations in the review is that statement would be audited, whereas at the moment the auditors certainly look at the narrative report to ensure that it's consistent with the accounts, but it's not strictly covered by the audit opinion. So sorry, a very long answer to I don't know the exact timetable for the various strands, and I think they'll probably be taken forward at different speeds.
And right, colleagues, it was the MHCLG who commissioned Sir Tony Redmond to produce this report. So technically it sits with MHCLG to now consider everything within the report and take it forward. Councillor Kempji is absolutely correct. At the time that it was mooted that we should bring the completion of the audit forward from the end of July to the end of May, we did request that did not happen. Actually, as you can see, we're 2 years on and we have been able to comply with that. And indeed, during COVID, we complied with it within 6 days. So we missed the end of May, but it was completed by the 6th of June, and I think it was, which is an absolutely exceptional performance. My disappointment is that the Redmond review is talking about moving the audit back by 2 months, but I've not seen anything in the report that moves the completion of the accounts by 2 months. So technically, it puts the audit back to where it was and gives them an extra timeline, but does not give us an extra timeline for completion. But to be honest, as Anne said, I think we're reasonably relaxed with that now that we can prove that we can complete the work sooner. It does free our colleagues up in order to do other added value tasks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Members, any other comments or questions, or are you happy to receive and note the report?
Yep, agreed.
Okay, thank you. We go to item 10, which are the minutes of the pension fund panel for the 14th of February. Is the committee happy to receive those reports?
Agreed.
Okay. Members, are there any questions on the minutes of the 14th of February exempt minutes? If not, we can go straight to a vote on those, but if there are, then we'll have to go for voting the public out. Members, are there any comments or questions that you wish to raise? No, okay.
Chairman.
Are you happy to receive?
Mr. Chairman, I think just for form's sake, it would be worthwhile just formally excluding the press and public so the papers remain exempt.
Okay, thank you. So members, we're being asked to resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the following item of business, as it is likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that the members of the public were present during this item, there will be disclosure, so them of exempt information. Members, are you happy to resolve that the public be excluded?
Agreed.
Agreed. With that, can we come to item 12? And are we happy to receive
Chairman,
as attached?
Oh, many apologies for interrupting. We'll just quickly wait for the webcast to be